Hey, Pete, have you ever been fascinated by the allure of secret societies throughout history?
Are you kidding me right now, Andy? I live for this stuff. From the Freemasons to the Illuminati, I am obsessed with these clandestine groups. The Rosicrucians and their ancient wisdom, the Skull and Bones Society at Yale with its powerful alumni network. I'm drawn to them. There's something about how they offer this exclusive access to hidden knowledge. They totally capture my imagination. It's like they give this sense of belonging to something greater than oneself.
Wow, sounds like you're looking for one yourself.
Do you even need to ask? Where do I sign? How much blood do I have to give? Are there any required tattoos or brands involved? Is it my first or second born that they need?
Well, what if I told you that there's a secret society for film lovers right here at the Next Reel family of film podcasts, all proud members of the True Story FM network, and you don't have to give any blood or either of your kids?
You've got my attention, Andy. What can you tell me about this cinematic brotherhood?
When you become a member of the Next Reel family, you gain access to a treasure trove of exclusive content, early episode releases, and a community of passionate film enthusiasts who share your love for movies. It's like being initiated into a secret order where you're privy to the inner workings of our shows, including the Next Reel, the Film Board, Movies We Like, Sitting in the Dark, and CinemaScope.
But Andy, as a member, will I unlock a world of bonus content from extended conversations and behind-the-scenes insights to exclusive pre-show and post-show discussions that expand the conversations about the films we love?
Why, yes, the true power of this secret society lies in its community. As a member, you'll join an exclusive group within our Discord community where you can engage in clandestine conversations with other passionate film fans in our members-only channels.
But what about live recordings, Andy? The sacred rituals of any good cinematic order. Will these episodes be scheduled in advance so that members like me will know when to gather around the virtual pyre in real time via YouTube?
Ah, yes. Perhaps the greatest secret of all is that by becoming a member, you're not just investing in your own entertainment, you're also supporting the tireless work of our independent creators and helping to keep the magic of cinema alive and well. So if you're ready to join this elite group of film lovers and unlock the secrets of cinema, head over to truestory.fm/join. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you will gain access to a world of exclusive content, engaging discussions, and a community that shares your passion for movies. Head to truestory.fm/join to sign up.
Andy, I can't wait for you to welcome me into the inner circle of the Next Reel family of film podcasts. I'll see you in the secret chambers. Now, when do I get my ring?
Well, we don't actually offer rings with your membership.
Tattoos or brands? When can I do that?
No tattoos.
Secret handshakes?
Tell you what, you and I can come up with our own secret handshake, okay?
No, I mean, at the very least.
Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Meet Zinnia.
You are being very polite to someone who is attempting to kill us.
Her wife, Saffron.
You know I'm wildly, madly in love with you.
And their best friend, Goldie.
Glad we didn't miss all the fun.
Swords in hand, they defend their city from the worst of humanity.
I am Lord Buxton Blue.
Equity Electric.
Herr Haig. Virgil Walcott. Vicious Suave.
Follow their adventures on the Swashbuckling Ladies Debate Society audio drama podcast. Available now at truestory.fm/swashbuckling.
In a world where podcasts are a dime a dozen, one show dares to stand out from the rest.
The Film Board, a podcast unafraid to tell it like it is.
We're here for one reason and one reason only. Downloads.
That's right. We review new release movies because that's what gets people's attention.
But just because we're in it for the clicks doesn't mean we don't take our job seriously.
We're part of the Next Reel family of film podcasts, and we're proud of it.
Our reviews are just as insightful and thought-provoking as any of our other film podcasts.
It's just that this podcast is all about that sweet, sweet SEO.
The nectar squoze from the tree of Bing.
We're only human, but we're also creators.
And creators eat clicks to survive.
So if you want honest, unfiltered opinions on the very latest movies right on opening weekend,
delivered with the self-awareness of a team looking for downloads,
then tune in to the Film Board.
Where every download counts, but yours counts the most.
Welcome to Movies We Like, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
What's the buzz, Andy? Tell me what's happening.
On today's episode, we have invited editor Lucy Donaldson to talk about Norman Jewison's 1973 movie, Jesus Christ Superstar, a movie she likes. Lucy, welcome.
Welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
We're thrilled to have you, thrilled to talk about this movie because it's definitely a unique kind of take on the musical and everything. And
yeah, well, I thought I would be bold and be honest. You know, it's a movie that I absolutely love. So, you know, why not talk about why, even though it may not be the coolest option I could have chosen.
Are you kidding? It's fantastic.
You can imagine the reactions I get when people say, "What's your favorite film?"
Well, I think it's especially delightful because we're going to start talking a little bit about your career and the things that you've been working on leading up to your pick of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yes. What's your point?
Well, let's jump back and just talk about like how you got into the world of editing. Like what were the steps that you took to kind of like land that first editing gig?
I went back to school. I'd done a few other jobs bouncing around, and you know, I just knew I wanted to do something more creative. So I ended up at the National Film and Television School in the UK, which was an amazing experience. And because I was a bit older, when I graduated, I was extremely motivated to, get going. And I had a couple of really good pieces of luck. Like, while I was still there, I interned on Cranford. It's called Return to Cranford, starring Judi Dench and a few other British stalwarts. And then I worked on another BBC drama, which actually won a BAFTA. But my big sort of shift was I assisted Tariq Anwar, who cut The King's Speech and American Beauty. And then once I was assisting him, I sort of came into this sort of rarefied world and how I ended up living in the States where I am now. So I assisted for a few years, I think about 9 years, including at Blumhouse, who were really taking off when I started working with them. Yeah, it was a great time to be there, and they were very busy, and I got to meet so many people there. And then Tim Alverson, who works a lot with them, came into my room one day with a hard drive and said, "Do you want to have a go at this?" So, you know, it wasn't that easy. There were years and years of plugging away and running up to the wall and then sliding back down, but it did eventually happen. And I cut Ma, starring Octavia Spencer, which was a hit for everybody. And hurrah, hurrah, that was the thing that really got me going. I had cut on a Lionsgate film called The Choice a few years before that.
Right.
As well. So pretty wide range of styles from the get-go.
Well, and that's an interesting element, I think, also, as far as it comes to like editors and, you know, directors working with editors that they've worked with in the past and everything. Because, I mean, you hear like directorial style and things like that, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure editors also have a particular style, a way that they kind of choose to kind of craft the story that they're working on. And obviously that's usually in partnership with the director and the rest of the kind of the team of people putting stuff together. But what's that process?
Well, I think the thing which kind of encompasses everything as an editor is you just really become absorbed in whatever it is. So you're working with the director, they're the creative vision holders. And so it's really tuning into the material and what their vision is. And, you know, of course I have my own tastes and things that I like, but, you know, that for me is the beauty of it. And you just become in this world for how, you know, it's usually months and months and months, best part of a year on a feature, and you get to know everything intimately. And so, I mean, I'm not aware that I have any sort of particular style or through line, but I think that's the nice thing about being an editor is you can work on so many genres. And of course, the business being what it is, people want to pigeonhole you. And so you've done that. That's all you can do. Mm-hmm. But there's also a real randomness to it, you know?
I think it's interesting that you say that. You find, like, even in the ranks of the editorial staff, you can be pigeonholed as a horror editor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And features over television, over it's not a good thing, but it's definitely been my experience that people only believe you can do what you've previously done. And I think I've done quite a good job of being all over the map. It's so harder to pigeonhole.
For sure.
Because you went from Ma to Breaking News in Yuba County, which is definitely comedy, and then A Haunting in Venice, doing kind of one of the Poirot mysteries with Kenneth Branagh. And then Unspoken, which is a Chinese story. And so it's been a wide variety of different kind of tones and vibes and everything. But I definitely think that I suppose you can see like some of it, like there's a through line, but at the same time, like you said, it does feel very, very random, and it's probably just very project based. Everything's going to have its own tone based on the whatever subject is the story you're telling.
I don't know about you, but I like to work, so. If someone asked me, it's very rare that I would be
right.
No, I don't love your vibes. I don't love Poirot's vibes. Right.
But I guess, if I do have a through line, it's mystery. Certainly Unspoken, and the project that I'm finishing off now, Red Camellia, has a mystery vibe, sort of psychological thriller through line. But Jesus Christ Superstar does not. So it's
definitely different.
Definitely different.
Well, what's your process? Like when you jump into a film, I mean, do you kind of just watch everything and just kind of really kind of absorb all of that material for a while before you start cutting? Or do you like pick a few particular scenes and go, let's just play with this and see? Or does it depend on the director? Or does the director give you stuff and just like play with it and then show me and then we can start talking?
Yeah, I mean, it's dictated really by the shoot. So at the end of the shoot, one is required to present an editor's cut. So that very much focuses the mind. And so you keep up to camera. Ideally, you're cutting a first version of what was shot the day before, or as soon as you get the material. But the thing is to really know the material and to be control isn't quite the right word, but to know it inside out. You don't want to be surprised when looking through takes and going, oh, I didn't realize he did that. It's my job to really watch everything and absorb everything so that when you are putting things together, it's a choice. You don't really want... there is a magic of happy accidents, of course, but that's a really important thing to know the material. So you have to be very organized and keep up to the best of your ability so that it's all very manageable. I mean, I like to have scene cards on one wall, a calendar on another wall, sort of safety of the edit room. So then you can concentrate and come up with creative ideas, but within a very manageable environment. Don't like chaos.
How early are you typically brought into the production team?
Day one. Yeah. And on a higher budget movie, you get a few days prep to set up. But yes, day one of getting the dailies, the assistant will prepare them. Yeah, so the afternoon of the second day of shoot is the earliest that I'll get material.
Are you working on Avid?
Yes, I like Avid.
As far as your process working with all of the other post departments, like how often are things coming, like you're getting something ready to send off to an effects team to kind of do some, add some stuff to the shots or whatever, or the sound department? And I mean, what's kind of that relationship with all those different departments?
Well, my experience on A Haunting in Venice was the best one that's ever been. So Ken's office was down the hall from me. Our sound department was next door. Our visual effects department was upstairs. And that's unusual, in this very separated world that we seem to be living in. But it's so much more enjoyable if you can just run up the stairs and say, what was that thing that you said in that email? And that's where the sort of inspiration can strike. But usually, you have your hands so full during the shoot because you don't get a lot of time once they finish shooting to show the director, which is very nerve-wracking. Usually you'll be sending scenes at the end of each week as well to reduce the amount of surprises. And that's really just so you can see if there are anything that the director should be aware of, so that all you're really looking for at that point is tone and performance, and so the director can see. I don't normally get much feedback on those scenes that get sent on a Friday, but it's you really don't want to be in a position where the director hasn't seen anything for the editor's cut. That's just too stressful. So you're really trying to keep everyone, well, not everyone, the director and yourself up to speed with what's happening.
And I suppose that those weekly scene cuts that they're looking at, are they also using those to determine reshoots and to say, oh, that didn't quite work, or this doesn't tie together right, we're going to need to go back into that?
Yeah, that can definitely be. If something isn't working, then it's good. It's good to let the director know. It's obviously, being an editor is a very political role as well. But yes, you would definitely, if there was something that you felt the director should be aware of, then that's the time to do it as soon as you've received the material, and say, hey, just wanted to get your feedback.
Well, yeah, and I suppose that's interesting because they might have had a very specific idea as to oh no, I want this to cut to that very deliberately, which might not make sense upon immediately looking at it. And you look at the footage and I don't know how that is meant to get from this to this.
Yeah, and unless you've worked with the director before, you're still feeling your way. And it could be that the director went for something like a bold choice. And so you certainly don't want to be giving the impression that you're in any way surprised or disappointed or thought that isn't the best possible way to have done it, which is hard. Usually the shoot happens elsewhere and you're in a different city and the director's attention is on set and they've got so much that they're doing.
Especially when the director is also starring in the film.
Right. A little busy.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding.
I want to go back to process because one of the things that I think is so interesting, and I will preface this by saying I've never cut a feature film, and what I find, especially over the last 10 years or so, is that the tool set is so spectacular in our editing applications that I tend to perseverate on the product, and I will use the tools as I'm cutting a project together to maybe a greater extent than the workflow demands. I'm wondering how you keep yourself from saying, I could sweeten the color, I could sweeten the tone, or do you do that kind of stuff in your editor's cut?
I mean, time is really the dictator because, you have a team around you who, if there's a scene which really needs some color attention and is distracting, then sure. But really, you're putting the nuts and bolts and the basics together. And for example, in A Haunting in Venice, Ken was very keen that I didn't cut with music. And I think that's a really good approach because if it's working without music, it's only going to get better. And that's a situation where you not that you can hide things, but you could really just work at each stage. So the rhythm and the material and the performances are really what you're concentrating on. And then you build from that. So when all the other departments come on and are involved, and it gets richer and more sophisticated. But really, that editor's cut is to show that the story works, the pacing works. And of course, you include everything that was shot so that the director can see. I would never start cutting scenes out or even lines at that point. You want to know what you're working with. So no, there aren't too many bells and whistles at that point.
Are you obviously not for Haunting in Venice per Ken's decision, but I mean, when it comes to adding music like temp tracks and stuff, is that usually a decision the director makes? I like this tone of music, use this here, or do you participate in some of that for your editor's cut?
Oh, we very much participate. It's usually that the director has so much going on, possibly before the shoot, you might receive some cues, or if there's a composer already on the project, then I would use their previous scores as a go-to. But no, music is very much, and poor us editors that are overlooked for all the things that we do initially. But yeah, music, we do temp visual effects, we do a lot of sound work, and that becomes like the skeleton for the other departments. And of course, they bring so much more to it. But you have to get the story to work, and you have to know that it's going to work. So there's an awful lot of temporary things that we do, which sets the tone in a lot of cases. But yeah, if the director has a certain song or score that they particularly like, then that makes life easier. It's very hard to have a blank page on. But then again, that can be where, you might start hearing something as you're cutting picture. And
sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love music editing. It's
Have you ever had a director though, like fall in love with one of the temp tracks and want to try to keep using that? Because
all the time.
You hear
those stories. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's so hard. It's especially, if it's something very, very moving. And of course, as an editor, you want to use the most effective, which is usually the most expensive song or yeah. So that's always hard, unpeeling it. And then occasionally, a director will get so used to it that someone has to stump up the cash.
Yeah, right.
But yeah,
I don't know how just to what degree this story is apocryphal, but I've heard it and read it multiple times that famously George Lucas and the first Star Wars movie are the non-example, the counterexample to a film that was comically not working until John Williams stepped in and actually gave him the music. And so your comment about Ken not wanting to cut to music to see if it works, of course that makes sense. There's a legacy of mistakes made that are hidden by a glorious score. And Haunting in Venice is just lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was an amazing project to work on, but just sparse musically. But that was very much a choice too.
But not sparse. Like that's actually the thing that hits me about that movie, that it's so deeply color timed. Like it has a real identity, and so I think color can hide things too, to the same extent, especially in a horror type, moody psychological horror. So that's what leads to these sort of questions on how much do you get to work with to hide, versus, as you say, you might call it the scaffolding in the middle of the desert for your bohemian players to dance about on. I don't know where that comes from. That illusion.
I don't either. I don't either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly with a Haunting in Venice, a lot of what we were doing is building an atmosphere and building the tone.
Yeah.
Well, and that's interesting because also like with that particular story, I mean, it's obviously based on like a classic mystery novel, but in the way that you're structuring the story, you want to make sure that everything is building appropriately. Likewise, something like Breaking News in Yuba County, comedy, like some of these things work best with an audience. Like when test screenings happen, like do you go to see how things play with audiences and see if
I love going to test screenings.
Yeah, okay.
I remember the first time we tested A Haunting in Venice, that seance scene, which is very tense, and then the parrot speaks, which is me, by the way. I am the voice of the parrots. Should put that on my IMDb page. No one else would do it.
Absolutely should.
But people laughed, and I think that's a good thing as a release of tension, but it had never struck me as particularly amusing. But yeah, no, sitting in a room with an audience is just the best thing, that you can feel reactions in a way that you can never get from a set of notes.
That's great, because I know that can be one of those stressful things, and sometimes it's a required thing per like a studio or something, and some people are like, I really don't want to have to modify it based on what normal viewers are going to be saying. I have a vision for this, but I do hear a lot of people saying that they do find value in kind of just getting those reactions and seeing it play in front of people.
Oh, absolutely. that's the most important part of it, really, because you're making the film for the audience. Once you've had one of those test screenings, it just grounds you in reality of what's working and what isn't maybe working. And the conversations are definitely informed by those screenings a lot.
Yeah.
I think about jokes, action beats, and jump scares. Right, they're sort of the tropes of the genres that you tend to work in. Do you have a favorite in terms of cutting? Like I have to imagine that the jump scares are the most delightful, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yes, I mean, whenever you can hear verbally, you can hear some sort of reaction. It's great. You don't want people sitting there sort of smiling wryly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the one that comes to mind is the one that I just mentioned, like, because it was so tense, that seance scene, and we'd done so much work to sort of build it to that when the doors fly open, that was very satisfying. Yeah, and the laugh is always great, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about this film you're working on right now. I mean, it's listed as being in post-production. So it's done filming and you're just kind of knee-deep in your work right now?
Yeah, I mean, my part of it is mainly done. It's called Red Camellia. The director is Tamlin Hall, and it's a small town story. A cheerleader is murdered in a small town, and everyone's a suspect, with some very timely themes, I have to say. So yeah, it's a really good one. It's moving and hopefully suspenseful as well.
Fantastic. And it obviously fits right into the tone of these other projects that you're doing. So
not to say you're so subtly being pigeonholed, but clearly you have an aptitude for this kind of cutting.
Yeah. I mean, I love it as well. So yeah.
Yeah, right.
That's great. Do you have any sense at this point as to when it's going to get a release?
I don't know. I would imagine it will get a festival run, hopefully, later this year.
Great.
But I don't know what the plans for distribution are, honestly.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for it when it comes out so we can check it out and let people know to go see it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and same thing with, was it Unspoken, which is one we haven't been able to find. Here. Looks like it just had a 2024 festival run internationally, and it doesn't have domestic distribution yet.
Well, it was a co-production between China and the States. So, yeah, it's, I don't know, honestly, what's happening with that either. And it was filmed in Canada. So, yeah, I really hope that gets a release. It's about a student who's murdered on campus, and her father comes over from China to investigate. It's very tragic because it's based on a few true stories. So it's, it's definitely a story that I would like to see released. Yeah. So I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it will get a release of some sort because we definitely want to check it out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, let's use this as an opportunity to shift our attention and start talking about Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay.
All right.
May the witness take the stand.
Let's dig in.
Go hard or go home, right?
That's right. Here we are. This was my first time watching the film, and I know I knew the some, I should say, of the title song. I knew kind of just the basic themes of that, but otherwise, and I knew it existed, but somehow it just kind of completely escaped me through my childhood and everything. And I mean, I grew up watching musicals, working in theater in high school and everything. But yeah, I'm curious, like what your story is with your relationship with this film, and like how you discovered it, and then obviously it became an incredibly important film for you.
Yes, no, it really did. I saw it as a young kid, one Easter in a hotel, and it didn't really make a great impression. I remember the Herod song where the costumes are very colorful and it's all sort of jazzy and fun. But then I saw it again as a sort of 13 or 14-year-old, and it made a massive, massive impression. And it's been with me throughout my life. And so that's why I chose it, embarrassingly enough. But I absolutely love it. And so now I work in the industry, it is interesting to watch it like with a more critical eye of like, why does it have such a strong effect on me? And, it'd be nice to talk to you two more about it. But yeah, and I think, as a kid, it was one thing. As a teenager, I'm just going to come out and say it. Like, it's a very sexy film, I think. All those abs and sort of tan
so
skin.
Many
and
abs.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, the abs. Oh, my God.
Oh.
And then, later in life, in my 20s and beyond, like, my favorite scenes are when Jesus is hanging onto the rocks, bargaining with God. It's, it has so much in it. But, I have to say, I'm not a Christian, and it hasn't turned me into a Christian, and by being so blithe about it, I hope I don't offend anyone. But that's not it, and I like musicals, obviously, but I'm not a massive Andrew Lloyd Webber fan, so that's not it. And I really think it's just beautifully directed, and the cinematography is amazing, and editing is amazing, and yeah.
And Jesus is a smoke show. I mean, who are we kidding? Ted Neely is
gorgeous.
Gorgeous
so
in this
beautiful.
movie. Come on.
They all are. And I think,
Yeah.
One of the things is like this young cast, and I don't think any of them, I may be wrong, but most of them were from Broadway and hadn't acted in features before. And so there's this beautiful innocence, and they bring it. They absolutely don't hold anything back. And the tension between Judas and Jesus is very real. I mean, of course, it's got a lot of theatrical elements, but intense.
Well, and Pete called out Jesus and Ted Neely, but I would say Carl Anderson as Judas. I mean, he is like definitely carrying kind of that sexy 70s vibe that's going on with him.
Absolutely.
Great casting. And honestly, like, he was like my favorite part, like watching him and just the relationship that he had with Jesus, and just the way that, like, right from the beginning, he's always kind of separate and has those confrontational moments,
and has a wonderful glare. No one can glare like him.
Yeah, he was great in it, and it built to like that really kind of that powerful tragic death that he has, and then of course his later his spirit is back singing, but just still building to that moment was like really powerful. Like, I just really enjoyed watching him and the relationship that he had with Jesus over the course of the film.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the soundtrack, of course, is amazing.
Do you have a favorite song?
I love We Are Decided, the two priests in those huge hats and their midriff showing, obviously.
Oh my God, those hats.
That for a long time was my favorite. Yeah, and it's what is the song called when he's bargaining with? It's after Gethsemane, where Judas and Jesus have their big face-off in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Foolishly, I don't have the track list to open. I normally would.
Is that Could we start again, please? Was it before that one?
No, it was after that. Let me just see. Oh, I only wanted to say Gethsemane. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's very tortured.
It's an interesting musical. I was introduced to the musical before the movie, but all of it's been a part of life because Mom loved it, right? And when Mom loves some stuff, this is why I love canned heat to this very day. I don't apologize for that. And so, but the movie, I think structurally, any problems that I have with the movie are problems that I have with the musical, which is the first act is a banger, and the only thing interesting in the second act is King Herod's song. Like,
right.
Like, it's just sort of the story itself kind of falls apart. This whole dance between we're going to go see Pilate and we're going to march across the desert, and then no, Pilate says you got to go see Herod. Now we're going to march back. It's like it's practically a South Park episode. And then he says, "Oh, Herod says no, walk across my swimming pool." Well, I can't walk across your swimming pool. Okay, get back to Pilate. You're not a swimming pool walker. And all of that just feels so structurally weak to me, which is the problem with the musical, right? That I really struggle with that. The movie, ironically, makes the second act of the musical better because it's so much fun to watch these bohemians flail around in the desert. I absolutely adore the experience of watching this movie, even as its quality indicator, as you're watching it, like the barometer of how solid the movie is, falls fairly dramatically for me in the second act.
Right. I mean, I cannot be objective at all about this movie, so it's
and you should not be expected
for me to agree with you.
I disagree with me at this point, Lucy. God.
But just mentioning the desert, that's it's shot so beautifully, like in these graphic structures, and it's so minimal. It really is fantastic. But yeah, I mean, just the fact that it is the story of Jesus, which, I grew up in England, obviously, and went to a very loosely Church of England based school. It was not at all cool to be a Christian, or, there was just...
The staff didn't carry tridents around? Was that not a thing at your school?
No. They the staff, I have to say. They were all playing guitars and that. But just the fact of what it's achieved, a sort of teenager to have an interest in that story. It's amazing to me that they brought it to life.
I think that part of it for me that was so interesting to watch is they Norman Jewison kind of like tapped into one kind of like really kind of, and I don't know the musical. Obviously this was my first time seeing the story, so I haven't seen the musical, but like having it like cast with these like beatnik hippie characters that arrive on a bus in the middle of the desert in Israel.
Love that bus.
Like it's very kind of much, we're setting up this idea of this theatrical production. It feels of its era with kind of that late 60s, early 70s, kind of the hippies and everything, but also kind of like that Jesus, like the rediscovery of Jesus with some of these groups also. So I don't know, he just like the way that he tapped into these sorts of people in this sort of story, feeling like they're putting on a show, but then it just kind of becomes the show. It was kind of like this meta construction, and then to go shoot it in the desert in Israel also with some of these fascinating locations, like it was like a Henry V type of story where like you see it starting as a stage show, like when Olivier did it, and then suddenly over the course of it, you're actually there living it. And it just kind of had that same vibe to me. And I thought it was so fascinating, especially with this group of people choosing to tell it, because it is young, exciting, sexy people telling this story about Jesus.
Yeah, no, I really agree. And I think the way that we are brought into the story is exactly what you say. And, you become sort of a cast member and are carried away as they are carried away. And at the end, you can see they're really moved and that they had an experience. And yeah, I think that juxtaposition of the kind of people that they are as actors in that backdrop of like this ancient land, definitely genius on the part of Norman Jewison.
I think the framing mechanism is brilliant, especially, call out the end too. They get back on the bus. And I think that as a bookend is really lovely. But the other thing that is weirdly, deceptively expert is the way he introduces modern sort of Anthropocene artifacts, right? We get the scaffolding first, which feels like, more of a prop or set dressing, but then it goes to Jesus goes to the market and upends all of the places. They've got like postcard racks and sunglasses for sale and all
automatic weapons,
automatic weapons. Yeah. and then, by the second act, you're so accustomed to the sort of weirdness of modernity being thrust at you when the tanks come over the hillside, over the horizon, and the jets fly over you. That I don't know how he tricked me, but by that point in the movie, I was in it. I was like, well, of course the Romans have jets. Like they would be jet enabled. Yeah.
I fully agree. And I think that makes it like a story for sounds ridiculous, but for all time, for all ages, you're in it, and it's very effective for making it, modernizing it.
Yeah. I was watching it alone, and my wife and daughter walked through the room several times and eventually just stopped. The movie is magnetic. I don't know why. Like, you may come to it for different reasons, but once you start watching it with any level of attention, you kind of can't stop.
Right. Yeah. Now, there's a real magic, and as we're sort of taking it apart, it's like, is it this? Is it that? But it's, to me, it's just one of those situations where the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. Like, there is a real magic to me, and the fact that I watch it every Easter and not more often because I want to not OD on
Maintain
it.
the magic.
There is
please.
definitely something that keeps me hooked.
There's an interesting element to this decision that Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice chose to tell this story in that style of like rock opera, where they're basically singing the entire show, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because I've seen it first and more often, but like for me, like Evita, it feels like they really kind of figured it out by the time they got to that one. Like with this one, I couldn't remember the story and all the different characters as well. And so I had to like read through a synopsis and go, oh, okay, that's what these pieces were and everything. So I feel like you can definitely get a sense for me of their passion and excitement about telling the story this way. But I definitely feel like it felt like an earlier work to me. And by the time we got to other things like Evita, I feel like they've kind of figured out how to fine tune that work and everything. But
yeah. And I think, again, that's, the youthfulness of everyone that worked on it.
Sure.
It's sort of naivety, but God, does it work? And yeah, I think the fact that they're not having long conversations and then suddenly bursting into song, I love that, because that's always a very hard transition for me, about when somebody feels the need to start singing about how they feel after they've just been having a very real conversation with someone.
Do you have a broader relationship with Andrew Lloyd Webber works? Like, does Technicolor Dreamcoat have a similar impact on you as Superstar?
Absolutely not. I do like Evita, but beyond that, it leaves me very cold. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's like, it's a funny relationship. Like, the highs for me, especially in my youth, when I was a musical theater kid, were Evita, Phantom of the Opera, Superstar, of course. But then Starlight Express comes along. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Nobody gets this. Nobody does. But School of Rock comes along, and it's a triumph. It's just a lovely ode to a different kind of music. And so I'm real hot and cold with the Webber Rice compilations.
Me too. I don't know if it's Andre Previn's involvement, because I don't know very much about the story of the making of it, but I believe Andrew Lloyd Webber wasn't very much involved in the movie. So, but no, I'm the same as you. I like certain sort of musicals. Like, another musical I love is Cabaret, which is grounded very much in reality.
Very grounded, yeah.
I'm absolutely not into Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and all of that, Oklahoma sort of, like, not me at all. So it's, as I say, I am as mystified as anyone.
Well, and this is Norman Jewison, who is coming off of the film version of Fiddler on the Roof, which is the film that he had done right before, which is another one where, again, he kind of took it out of a situation that felt more stagey, and he wanted it to feel like these were real people in like the real situations and everything. And it definitely feels like a continuation of what he was doing with that film and just amping it up, because that one was definitely more realistic in the sense of how he chose to tell that story, even if you have the metaphorical fiddler still sitting on the roof and everything. But here it's like, I mean, like, there was definitely a vision that he had here to just change things up quite a bit, which is interesting.
Yes. And I think it's all very bold. Like, certainly the editing choices, they go from like these massive wides to like extreme close-ups of on the beat of the music. They're just doing it.
You've done some musical work, right? That you did
Yes.
the Subway anthology. I have not seen. Yes, I haven't. I have not seen that either. I regret to say, but I'm curious. When you look at something like Superstar as a foundational film in your love of film catalog. How does that fruit come to ripen in your work editing other music pieces?
I mean, a lot of what happens editing is subconscious. I would really say that. Like, it's not a verbal, like, decision-making process. And then I have to really engage a different part of my brain where I think, why did I do that? Why did I want to put those two things together? I mean, I would love to do more musicals. I had a conversation with a really big musicals editor who said, "Oh, I'd love to do horror."
Oh, that's so funny. Going back to pigeonholing.
Yeah. You won't, because you've already locked in your future, but I get it.
So yeah, again, it's back to that where opportunity knocks. And but yeah, I would absolutely love to do more musicals. And it's, I think there's two sides of me. Like, I also really love realism. Like, what got me engaged in movies sort of as a late teen, early 20s were people like Ken Loach and Mike Leigh. I mean, they're so far away from Jesus Christ Superstars. Or maybe not. There is that sort of realism, I think, that you buy into.
Well, I just think it's so funny looking at Jewison's catalog. Like Andy mentioned, Fiddler and Jesus Christ Superstar, essentially back-to-back 71 and 73. But leading up to that, the Russians are coming In the Heat of the Night, the Thomas Crown Affair. And following Superstar, he does Rollerball. Jewison, what are you doing? Right? Like, there's a guy who's going to defy, he's going to defy any effort to pigeonhole. We're going to the desert, and then we're going to the roller rink. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. But I think, just sort of talking about why it works, I think that's a question about the business as a whole. Like, you can have all the elements together that you think, oh, this should be an absolute hit for sure. And something doesn't work. And then something like Jesus Christ Superstar, like, in my opinion, at least, it just works incredibly. But it's probably a very fine line. Like, the choices were so bold, the performances are so maybe a little OTT at points, which definitely have room for. But yeah, it could have tipped over very easily, and maybe some people think it did. But
I mean, I think some people do, because I mean, like, the critical reaction was not very positive with the film and everything. But I mean, it did well at the box office. Like, it was a success, and obviously, it's kind of this. I mean, both the film and the stage versions have kind of continued in popularity over the decades since it first played. But I think that also speaks to just like what you were saying, like how they went big, they went bold, they their hearts are on their sleeve with their performance. Like it's full of like kind of this raw energy. And I think some people it is harder to kind of tap into that, or to welcome that. Like, they see that and it's like, that just is too silly or too much or too something, and they can't open themselves up to kind of taking all of that in. But I think that's a struggle with films like this, because Jewison was doing something big and bold, and so were Weber and Rice. And for me, it shows on the screen that it was like, they took a big swing and they did a great job hitting it. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. And I think, I of late have become a bit obsessed with podcasts, which are all about the industry and the business. And it's just so nice to remember, like, that it's actually an art form and it really touches people. And if you're so consumed with how much money is something going to make, there's no room for that magic. And let's hope that we can get back to that at some point, because it really is. It's a reflection of our culture, and something as bold as this. It's wonderful.
I do think this is one of the perils of this one, is that it's a great example of a work that demands participation from the audience. right? It doesn't, I don't know how to watch. I'm like you. I don't know how to watch it completely objectively because it is such a part of my history. The music is such a part of my history that if I were to have come to it like Andy, who's again, objectively a curmudgeon at this point, I look forward to reading Andy's review of the film because I think that there, how much joy do you bring to your watch of this film is sort of what hinges on the power of the movie to affect you.
Yes.
That's like my simple perspective. I love it because I love to love it.
Yeah. But, I watched it again, obviously, in preparation for this, and I loved every second of it, as I always do. So there's something very perennial and staining.
You mentioned the emotional connection and everything, and we haven't brought up Mary Magdalene yet, Yvonne Elliman playing her. And I just one of the other, like the three core characters, Jesus, Judas, and her, like those three had such like emotion and just brought so much to the story. And that song, Everything's All Right, like I have been singing it since I watched this. That is the song more than even Jesus Christ Superstar that has stuck with me. Like it won't leave my head. It's a fantastic song. But it also just speaks to that emotional core relationship that she has with Jesus that really kind of like develops all the way through later when she's talking to him toward the end of the film with the I don't know how to love him, right? And like that relationship was like emotional and powerful. Like I really enjoyed how that character came across in the film. It was very well done.
Well, probably controversially, I've never really connected with her songs. And I think, I go back to like being heterosexual. For me, it was all about the men. She's like, could we start again, please? Yeah. Let's get
back to the guys. That's very fun. Well, then I will take her songs because I really enjoy them.
Yes. And I hear you, but it's absolutely not what it's about for me, which is again one of the things that makes me laugh about it. I mean, Bob Bingham, who plays Caiaphas with a huge hat,
yes,
and very focused when he's on screen.
Yes.
Well, and some of the other actors that are fantastic sort of faces in this thing are guys like Barry Dennen, who was in Fiddler, but also, The Dark Crystal. He was a voice in The Dark Crystal. He's massive voiceover work lately and really lovely stuff. Josh Mostel is a phenomenally talented comedic actor in general, but the song and dance number as King Herod is a showstopper. It is a showstopper of a piece.
Yes,
and he is unafraid to leave it all out there.
Yes,
on that.
Yes. In keeping with the theme of like everyone bringing it, like nothing held back, and I think that's what. Just kind of. It's so captivating. It's like, all right then, come on.
Yeah. Well, and also just kind of like going back to the way that the film starts with the bus and the arrival and everything, I found it really kind of hit me as like quite powerful the way that they chose to end the film, because here you have Jesus on the crucifix and everything, and the whole troupe kind of slowly, a little less enthusiastically, they move back toward the bus to get on it. And you do have just a couple of the characters, like I think it's the actor who plays Judas and the actors. I'm calling them that because at this point they're the actors who are playing this thing.
Yes.
And the actress who played Mary, they kind of stop and look around like they're expecting Ted Neely to be there too, and he's not.
He's already on the bus.
Well, it's like, but he's Jesus, and it's like the way that played was actually it was a very creative way to kind of do that, because we don't really see the whole resurrection and everything. We have kind of that sunset shot at the end, but that kind of alludes to it. But I was like, that was actually a really creative and touching way to kind of get that across. I really liked that ending.
Yes, it was very touching.
And I don't know how it ends on the stage. Pete, did you say, or have either of you seen the stage show?
I think it's open to interpretation by the director. I think some cases they leave him on the thing, but the I've never seen a production of this where a bus of bohemians comes into the stage left, right?
I have seen our stage version of it, and I was like, nope, this is not at all it. But that very last shot of the landscape has a shepherd and his sheep going through the sort of middle ground, which I think I remember reading was not at all planned. They just happened to be in the shot.
Oh, wow.
So maybe there is some sort of spirit that was present.
Yeah.
Had they really wanted to be bold, they would have just left Ted Neely there on the cross. That would have been a bold ending. The bus takes off and Ted Neely's hanging around.
Yes, but I also like, them sort of wrapping themselves in their in their shawls, like they have had an experience which they didn't expect to be moved by because they're sort of hardened New Yorkers or wherever they came from, but they were touched. Yeah,
I really liked that ending. It was just, considering like it has that sense of kind of just the theatricality, meta nature of it with the scaffolding and everything, and then you get to that ending, and it just felt like an actual like. I don't know. It felt like a filmic ending that Jewison had come up with. Like, let's do this in a really creative, cinematic way that allows us to kind of tell the rest of the story without having to overtly tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad that you liked it. It would have been a very different conversation if you'd sat through it for the first time. Like, I have no idea why he says this.
No, it's a winner. It's a winner.
Yeah, I generally am a fan of musicals, and this was one, like Jesus Christ Superstar. Like, I knew that song. Like, I had heard that song before.
Was that the only song that you'd heard?
It's the only song that I've ever heard from this.
Andy.
Yeah, and I didn't even know the right lyrics. Like, I sang it a lot, but I always, as I learned, always sang it the wrong words for it. So that was also part of it. But and that ending, like, that was actually an interesting way to end it, because again, we bring Judas back into it, and then you have him with, I don't know, I'm assuming that the women were all like different angels of some sort that were kind of singing that song, kind of talking to Jesus about, I don't know, that whole idea that Judas was like, your head's getting a little too big, like you're thinking too much of yourself, and just the way that whole played, like, I didn't even know that was what that song was about. So it kind of hit me, I'm like, oh, is this what that's been about this whole time? Like, it's funny to kind of like have all these realizations as I'm actually seeing it for the first time.
Yeah. And the lyrics are amazing. I mean, I think Tim Rice is real genius lyricist, but yes, it's like, why didn't you choose now when the communication would have been so much easier? And lots of sort of questioning the Bible itself, which must have been pretty bold in the early 70s.
For sure. Yeah, the betrayal with a kiss bit at the end after the Last Supper is just I like the interpretation a lot as we open the second act, because, having it as a picnic and yet still maintaining the tableau and the frieze is like, again, bold choice. Like it plays.
Bold choices.
Really well.
Good. Yeah. And also the images of the paintings of the crucifixion, that was a real bold choice, just suddenly out of nowhere, but I'm all in. It's like, you feel, I think that the passing of time of how much Jesus has been depicted over all those centuries. Yeah, I mean, they really shouldn't get away with it, but they do.
Totally. That should be on the poster. They shouldn't get away with this. Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, it is a cool film. It is a bold, fascinating film. Conveniently, I also watched it on Easter. So I was like, I feel like I'm doing my part today.
Doing your part for the cause.
That's right. But yeah, such an interesting film. I'm really glad that you brought this as the film that we were going to talk about today, because it is wholly unique. And I think that, I don't think you have to be a Christian to watch this and appreciate the story and what they're doing and what they're choosing to tell with
We're
it.
a bunch of heathens.
Right. Totally.
And we love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels very much Jewison. Like this feels like, especially when you know what he did with Fiddler, and then you watch this, it's like this is how he likes to do his musicals. He likes to, a little more realistic, but also then we're going to throw in this bohemian vibe to it and everything. And it's, I don't know, it really tapped into kind of the tone for the world. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Good.
It's a bold pick, Lucy. You came out swinging.
Oh, no.
I love it. I just love it.
Really should have picked something cool about Hey Ho. I didn't. I was honest.
No, this is as cool as it gets. The 70s.
We love it. We
love it. Big fan.
Well, I mean, we know what films you have coming out, Red Camellia, and then hopefully people will be able to also be able to see Unspoken when it hits theaters. Do you have a social media presence? Are you online? Do you have a place where people can find you and learn more about what you're up to? Website, anything?
I just have a website, lucydonaldson.com. I'm not very good with the socials, I'm afraid. So,
okay. But people can check out your website and see what what you're working on and everything. So that's a good place to check.
Do keep that updated.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Well, we'll have links for that in the show notes so everyone can look at it and keep track of you. Again, Lucy, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this movie today.
It was really a pleasure. Thank you both so much. It was fun.
Thanks, Lucy.
We had a lot of fun. Again, we'll have the link to Lucy's website in the show notes. We, again, appreciate you joining us here today. For everyone else out there, we hope you like the show and certainly hope you like the movie like we do here on Movies We Like. Movies We Like is a part of the True Story FM Entertainment Podcast Network and the Next Reel family of film podcasts. The music is Chonk Clap by Out of Flux. Find the show at truestory.fm and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd at The Next Reel. Learn about becoming a member at thenextreel.com/membership. And if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, we always appreciate it if you drop one in there for us. See you next time.